Namaste. This is a window in my office. To all of you, this looks like any other window. But for me, this is a window to my world. It's a window to the world of my children. I've had many and interesting conversations at this window with my children. Hello, ma'am. Where have you been, ma'am? You weren't seen in school, ma'am, for so many days. Ma'am, nice dress. Ma'am, what you're doing? Ma'am, how much work you're doing? Well, that feels good, very encouraging. This window brings me the smiles that I crave for every morning. It's break time and my kids walk in there and they make it a point to come and say hello to me. So for me, this window is very precious. This window is precious for another reason. Because this window is a window into the world of Rio. Rio is our school dog, our personal dog, my personal dog, but I can't even call him that anymore because everybody has so many mothers and aunts in school now. Rio is a trained therapy dog, and kids have so many questions about Rio. Ma'am, where is Rio? In fact, since the time he's come to school, kids have stopped asking me about me. They only ask me about him. Ma'am, where is Rio? What has he eaten? Is he sleeping? Has he got up? And all of that. Ma'am, maybe take him for a walk. And quite clearly, Rio loves it too. He waits for them just the way I do. This window also brings me tons of surprises, delightful surprises. Some of them not so delightful, but delightful ones like snails, earthworms, worms, caterpillars, as you can see that. Sometimes frogs, which like I said aren't the most delightful things for me. Wounded birds. This window also brings kids into my office because, they all want me to click their pictures at the window because they make something, they come and show it to me at the window, and then I call them and come on in, let me click pictures. So a lot of the stuff that's seen at the window comes into the office. Sometimes it's just, ma'am, click our photo, no. So they just stand there to get clicked. And I'm telling you, it makes my day. It makes every bit of my work worth its while. But one day, I received a letter. I have received letters in the past from this window, letters and cards. But this letter was more than just a letter. This letter transformed me. This letter changed the way I perceive my own work. No, in fact, I would like to call this letter an epiphany for me. So you see, I run a school. I'm running a school that for most people is a special needs school. Yes, we've been awarded for 2 consecutive years. We've been ranked amongst the top 10 schools in the country within the same category. So our school is known to most people as a school for the differently abled. But that day, when I saw this letter, I had a complete transformation in my mind, and my perspective about my own school changed forever. And here's what I saw in the letter. I will help who have challenges. A letter of just 6 words. And you have it. A letter that you can quite clearly see was written by a young lad who, in fact, in his own rights, had challenges of his own. I don't need to tell you that. You can see it for yourself. Reading, spelling, construction of sentences, but this one's pretty cool. Handwriting issues, placement of letters, I mean the works. As a special educator, we work on all of these matters, and here is a classic example of all of these challenges. A horrible, terrible phobia for mathematics. And if all of that isn't enough, a stammer. A stammer that was taking away whatever little challenge that he had. It was rather making it greater, and was taking away whatever little confidence that he had to speak, because he couldn't articulate his thoughts without breaking them. So that stammer was one of the biggest problems that he had. In fact, all of these weren't his problems at all. In fact, I remember a day when, after a week of being in school, he was gently ushered in by my principal to my room. And I remember they were at the door, and there was so much hesitance at the door. And he stood at the door, and she kept, cajoling him and telling him, "Come, darling, come inside." And he was like this and this. And then he came in. And he came and stood in front of me. And he looked around. And I swear to you, he was shivering completely. And my principal was holding him, and her hand was on his shoulder. And he looked me in the eye, and in Marathi, in the native language, he told me, after a long pause, he said, "Ma'am, this is the first time I'm entering a principal's office and not getting shouted at." And I said, "Oh, but darling, I'm not going to be shouting at you. I just wanted to say hello to you." And then, of course, I went on to tell him that I'm not the principal. He was a bit shocked, and even more happily shocked to know that the lady who actually ushered him was his principal. So he was feeling suddenly very friendly. So there's a history behind every child, and that's my little boy's story. And here's a letter that he wrote to me, like I said, that changed what I understood of my own school. I started rethinking about the term inclusion. I understand, and I know we can have a debate on this matter, because technically, a school like mine, which is home to 100 children with learning challenges, does not qualify to be called an inclusive school. But that day, I had a little voice inside of my head that said, "No, your school is not a special needs school. Your school is not a school for differently abled. Your school is an inclusive school." And this is a debatable matter. I know that. So I still wasn't opening my mouth to anybody until I went through an internal debate that went on for a very long time. I was unsettled. And that debate culminated in a poem. It culminated in a poem that, like all poems, are written at midnight. I don't know why all that miracle happens at midnight, but it does. So the creativity of the soul also happens at midnight. And I wrote that poem, and here's what I started it with. Who is to say who is being included? Who is to say who is being included when all of us may have disabilities that are hooded? Who is to say who is being included when all of us may have disabilities that are hooded? Why is inclusion something done by the haves to the have-nots? Why is inclusion something done by the haves to the have-nots? That sounds more like a favor of sorts. Nobody's special. We're all just unique. Nobody's special. We're all just unique. So inclusion is the acceptance of each one's individual streak. So let me ask all of you, how did you study when you were in school? How did you find it most comfortable to get your learning going? So maybe if I had to ask you your answer, some of you would say, I like to sit down and study, I like to walk and study. I used to do that. I used to walk across the terrace and I used to say read my notes loudly. And of course, some of you would have probably liked to have music in your ears. Am I right? I couldn't do that ever. Music in the ears and studying. Let me ask you, are you differently abled? Does that make you differently abled? Or are we just diverse? It's a thought I want you to work on. Why is it that we often say they are different from me? Why is it that we often say they are different from me when what makes us so beautiful is our diversity? I'm reminded of that song that all of us have been listening to some time back. Hind desh ke nivasi. Remember? Bela gulab juhi champa chameli प्यारे प्यारे फूल गूंथे माला में एक है. That's the beauty of our existence. We are diverse and we are beautiful. And which is why this churning led me to understand that what we have at our school and what most schools are inclusive. Why? Because see, inclusion is not about non-disabled and disabled people coming together. Inclusion is about diverse people coming together. And within the diversity, you could have 100 million things. You could have so much. Diversity has so many different forms and faces. So inclusion is coming together of diversities. Inclusion is when they have people coming together have a common goal. People coming together respect each other. They accept each other as they are. They love each other for who they are and as they are, and do not expect beyond that. Then I said to myself, inclusion is not about abilities and disabilities. Inclusion is about possibilities. The possibilities that we can explore being in a diverse community. Inclusion is about valuing people and making them matter. And inclusion is when you care. When you care, and like the little boy in my letter, when you dare to care in spite of your own challenges. A bunch of 90 kids who have challenges of their own are studying together. But they are so diverse in their own right. How can that school not be an inclusive school? That's what inclusion is. Inclusion is redefined as a place where unique people come together, respect, accept, and value each other's diversities. And that's the redefined inclusion that I'm talking about. Let's redefine inclusion. Shift the paradigm. Let's redefine inclusion and shift the paradigm. No judgments, no labels, no biases. I think it's about time. Let's get to know people beyond caste, gender, and disability. Please. Let's get to know people beyond caste, gender, and disability. It's the person inside that matters. That's the real identity. Nature, by its very nature, is so incredibly inclusive. On a hot, sweltering day, at the water spot, in the middle of the Masai Mara, in the middle of all these beautiful sanctuaries, you see all animals, a variety of animals coming together, sipping and dipping into the same pond of water. Everybody is invited, and yet nobody has been given an invitation. They don't need one. To each, it's their home. It's where they belong. It's theirs. It is where they feel wanted. It is where they are valued. It is where they are waited for. That's inclusion. Inclusion is a sense of belonging. Inclusion means when children wait for each other to come. Doesn't matter even if that child has probably put booger balls on your coat yesterday. It still doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if that child had gone around spitting on your tiffin box yesterday. It doesn't matter. That's inclusion. Inclusion is not about a geography. Inclusion is who I am. It's who you are. It's who we are. Inclusion is not about something that is done. Inclusion is, like the animals, it is what we exude to the people around us. I dream of a day when we won't need to talk about this concept anymore. That's my utopian dream. I dream of a day that this term won't be required anymore at all. I dream of a day when people won't need to be included, anymore, because they already are where they belong, here. I want to ask you to help in making that day come true. Let's talk less, be more. Let's include with our heart. Let's talk less, be more. Let's include with our heart. Hug, hold hands, meet, greet. A great way to start. And then someday, we'll need the word no more. And soon, we'll treat each other as one. And then someday, we'll need the word no more. And soon, we'll treat each other as one. And someday, we won't need to talk about inclusion anymore. Because that day, our work will be done. I pray that we all stay to see that day. Namaste.